What would you do if the person humiliating you had no idea they owed you their life? Picture this. 22 elite operators standing in perfect formation, and an admiral with a chest full of medals decides to make an example of the only woman in the lineup. He asks her one simple question, expecting to embarrass her in front of everyone. Her answer, a number so shocking it turned his face white and made every warrior in that room realize they were standing next to a legend they'd never heard of. This is the true story of the operator they called Ghost, and how one morning aboard a Navy carrier changed everything. The metallic floor beneath their boots reflected the overhead lights like a frozen lake. Inside the massive carrier, the air carried that distinct smell of industrial cleaner mixed with ocean salt that somehow found its way into every sealed compartment. 22 special operations warriors stood motionless, their breathing measured and controlled. 21 men, and at the far end of the line, one woman whose face showed absolutely nothing. Commander Maya Cross had mastered the art of stillness long before this moment. She knew that sometimes the smartest move is simply not moving at all. It was exactly 6 in the morning when the heavy door swung open. Admiral Richard Blackwood walked in like he owned the oxygen in the room, his uniform decorated with enough ribbons and medals to tell everyone he'd seen serious action. 2 assistants followed him, holding tablets and whispering updates that immediately stopped when they crossed the threshold. Everyone in formation somehow stood even straighter, even though they were already at attention. Blackwood's name was known throughout the entire special operations community, not just for his combat record, but for something else, too. He'd made it crystal clear over the years that he believed women had no business in this world. His view wasn't quiet or subtle. Everyone knew exactly where he stood. At ease, he called out, though nobody actually relaxed. Just another readiness inspection. Let's not waste time. He walked down the line methodically, occasionally stopping to fire off standard questions about equipment status or recent missions. The operators answered like machines. Yes, sir. No, sir. 3 weeks back, sir. The Admiral barely seemed interested in their responses, already moving before they'd finished speaking. A few positions away from Maya stood Chief Warrant Officer Don Warwick, his expression neutral but his eyes tracking everything. He'd been through enough of these inspections to know when something felt off. As Blackwood approached Maya, something shifted in the atmosphere. You could feel it without seeing it. Eyes flickered sideways without turning heads. Shoulders tensed, imperceptible. The Admiral slowed down, examining her with the kind of obvious scrutiny that told everyone exactly what he was doing. Lieutenant Commander, he paused, glancing at one of those tablets his assistant practically shoved into his hands. Your name's Cross, correct? Yes, sir. Her voice came out steady, loud enough to carry, but not aggressive. Nothing defensive, nothing apologetic, just facts. He stared at the screen like he was reading something suspicious. Transferred in from 5th Group Support Operations. It says here, you've been with this unit for 8 months. He looked up, narrowing his eyes. Your file seems remarkably thin for someone in this position. Yes, sir. Same tone, same volume. Absolutely no change. So tell me, Commander, what exactly were you doing before they put you here? Forward Support Operations, sir. A couple of the men exchanged quick glances. Chief Warwick shifted his weight just slightly, his gaze still locked forward but clearly tuned into every word. Support, Blackwood repeated, stretching the word out like it was some kind of insult. And somehow they decided you were qualified to fast-track directly into operational status. He didn't make it sound like a question, but everyone understood what he was really asking. I go wherever I'm ordered, sir. The corner of Blackwood's mouth twitched upward. A few of the younger operators smirked, taking their cue from the Admiral's attitude. So you've seen combat, I'm assuming. Or was all your support work confined to the safe areas? Maya's eyes stayed locked on a point somewhere past his shoulder. I've seen action, sir. Is that right? Blackwood's smile grew wider, his voice rising to make sure every single person in that space could hear him clearly. Then answer me this. Commander, what's your count? The question hung there in the air, like smoke. Everyone knew exactly what he meant. Confirmed eliminations. The number some operators still used to measure who was real and who wasn't. It was the kind of question that rarely came up in official settings and absolutely never during a formal inspection. With respect, sir, I don't keep track of numbers like that. Blackwood actually laughed, turning to look around the room to share his amusement. Most of the formation joined in, though a handful, including Chief Warwick, kept their faces completely neutral. "Come on now, Commander," he said, tapping his finger against the tablet. "Numbers are objective. It's a simple question for someone who's supposedly seen real action. 1, 2. Did you even fire your weapon?" The silence that followed felt heavy and uncomfortable. At the back of the room, a communications specialist slipped in quietly and whispered something urgent to one of the Admiral's assistants, who suddenly went rigid and tried desperately to get Blackwood's attention. The Admiral waved him off sharply, clearly annoyed at the interruption and determined to finish what he'd started. Maya's eyes shifted just slightly, catching the assistant's panicked expression for maybe half a second before returning forward. "Admiral," the assistant tried again, but Blackwood cut him off with another dismissive gesture. "I'm still waiting for an answer, Commander." Maya took a slow, deliberate breath. The entire room seemed to inhale with her. When she finally spoke, her voice carried to every corner of that suddenly silent deck. 467. "Sir." The room didn't just go quiet. It froze. That number seemed impossible. Entire platoons across multiple combat tours didn't accumulate numbers like that. The Admiral's smirk stayed frozen on his face, but something changed behind his eyes. Recognition first, then disbelief. Then the first real hint of fear. "What did you just say?" The mocking edge had completely vanished from his voice. 467 confirmed, sir. Another 83 probable. The smirk disappeared entirely. The assistant practically thrust a second tablet at him, showing something marked with the highest level security classifications. Red warnings flashing against the blue screen. Blackwood took it with a hand that was noticeably shaking. He looked at Meyer again, but this time he was seeing someone completely different. "Your previous assignment," his voice came out, barely above a whisper. "Joint Operations Command, Task Force, Umbra, Operational Detachment Sigma. Call sign Ghost." The reaction rippled through the formation like an electric current. A senior operator whispered something under his breath. Another closed his eyes briefly, processing. Chief Warwick's already perfect posture somehow became even more rigid. The color had drained completely from Blackwood's face. "Dismissed," he said abruptly, turning away. "Everyone dismissed. Right now." The formation broke in absolute silence. Operators filed out without a single word, many stealing glances at Maya, who remained perfectly motionless. Only after the space had nearly emptied did she move toward the exit. Blackwood's voice stopped her cold. The Admiral stood there alone now, all his assistants having quickly disappeared. "My office." "15 minutes. Maya navigated the curved corridors of the carrier with quiet efficiency. Around her, personnel seemed to create space instinctively, conversations dying mid-sentence. As she passed, word traveled at light speed on a ship, regardless of its size. She stopped outside the Admiral's office, checking her watch. 14 minutes since She waited the additional 60 seconds before knocking. Not early, not late. Precision had kept her breathing for this long. "Enter." Blackwood's voice had recovered some of its authority, though the earlier arrogance was completely gone. She stepped inside and closed the door. The office was surprisingly plain. Functional furniture, minimal decoration, just one photograph showing Blackwood receiving his first command. The lighting had been dimmed, throwing half his face into shadow. "Sit," he gestured to the chair facing his desk. Between them lay a sealed file, marked with black security bars running across it. 12 years, Blackwood said quietly after she'd taken her seat. "For 12 years I've carried Khyber Pass as my operation." "Yes, sir." Her voice gave away nothing. 43 men credited to my command decisions that day. 42, sir. The correction sat there between them like a physical object. Blackwood opened the file, revealing after-action reports and photographs. A snow-covered mountain pass, bodies scattered across rocky terrain, a younger version of Blackwood receiving a silver star. "You were never supposed to surface again," he said, turning pages to reveal an operational chart with multiple names completely redacted. Task Force Umbra was disbanded. All operators either reassigned or he stopped, or listed as casualties from unrelated operations. Operational security, Maya, finished for him. So why are you here, Ghost? Why now? New administration, new priorities. She nodded toward the window where another assistant was approaching with more documents. The old ghosts are getting reassigned. Blackwood's intercom suddenly buzzed to life. Admiral. Secretary of the Navy on Secure Line 1. Priority, Alpha, classification. He didn't move to answer it. They know you're here. They sent me here. Maya corrected him. The real question is whether they sent me because of you or in spite of you. The intercom buzzed again, more insistent this time. Blackwood ignored it completely, leaning forward across his desk. The count, is it actually accurate? To the best of my knowledge, sir. I didn't keep the tally myself. Joint Command Intelligence did that. For what purpose? You already know why, sir. Asset valuation, cost-benefit analysis. Blackwood's jaw tightened visibly. They gave you impossible missions. No, sir. Just missions that nobody else could officially acknowledge. She gestured toward the file sitting between them, like Khyber Pass. The Admiral closed the file with deliberate, careful movements. So what happens next, Ghosts? That depends entirely on you, sir. For the first time since entering, she leaned forward slightly. What's in that file is only part of the story. We both know that. The intercom buzzed a third time, a light now flashing on Blackwood's desk phone indicating someone with override authority. I have to take this call, he said, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. This conversation isn't finished. No, sir, she agreed, standing and walking to the door. It's only just beginning. She paused with her hand on the handle, looking back at him one last time. For what it's worth, Admiral, I never wanted any count. I just did what was necessary so that others wouldn't have to. As the door closed behind her, she could hear Blackwood picking up that secure line. Yes, Mr. Sekuto. Yes, I understand the sensitivity of the situation. Yes, she's here on the ship. No, sir, I don't believe that will be necessary. The ship's passageways felt different now. Operators who'd previously ignored Maya's presence now tracked her movements carefully. That number, 467, traveled through the carrier like electricity, through wire, charging every conversation and fundamentally altering how people saw her. By midday, Chief Warwick found her sitting alone in the officer's mess. He sat down across from her without asking permission. Ghost, he said quietly, leaning in. I thought you were a legend. A story people told. Maya continued eating without looking up. The men are talking about you, he continued. That number, is it actually real? Numbers don't lie, she replied, echoing the Admiral's own words. Isn't that what he said? Warwick glanced around cautiously. Blackwood's been locked in his office all day. Secure calls. Classified visitors flying in. Something major is happening. Something's always happening, Chief. That's exactly why people like us exist. Later that night, Maya returned to her quarters at 10 o'clock. The space was minimal, to the point of being stark. A bunk, a small desk, storage for essential equipment. While many operators decorated their personal spaces with photographs or mementos from deployments, Maya's quarters remained purely functional. The only personal item visible was a small, smooth stone on the desk, dark gray with a single white line running through its center. She changed into workout gear and began a precise stretching routine, working methodically through her entire body. Each movement addressed specific muscle groups, carrying years of operational stress. The routine served as meditation, allowing her mind to process everything that had happened. Sleep came easily, another skill refined through pure necessity. 5 hours of deep sleep was sufficient. At 2 in the morning, her eyes opened to complete darkness. Something had changed in the ambient sound of the carrier, a shift most people would never notice. A moment later, her secure tablet activated itself, glowing blue in the blackness. A message appeared on screen. Exfiltration protocol initiated. Primary asset compromise. Detected. Terminate current assignment. Immediately. Proceed to extraction point Charlie. Authentication code. Sigma 9. Black Lake. She read it once, memorizing every detail, then erased the message completely. The authentication code checked out, but the timing was completely unexpected. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "It's Warwick," came a whispered voice through the metal. "You need to move right now." She cracked the door open slightly, revealing the chief's face illuminated by dim red emergency lighting. His expression was grim. "3 counterintelligence officers boarded during night operations," he said without any preamble. "They're checking identification deck by deck, starting from the bridge level. Looking for me? They're not saying specifically, but they're carrying your file photograph." Maya nodded once. "You should return to your quarters, Chief. This isn't your operation." "Blackwood sent them," he insisted. "Whatever you really did at Khyber Pass, whatever credit he took for it, he's making absolutely sure it stays buried forever." For the first time since this started, something like real emotion crossed Maya's face, a brief hardening around her eyes. "What I did at Khyber Pass was save his life and the lives of 16 other operators. What he did was leave me behind to complete the mission completely alone." Warwick's eyes widened with understanding. The official report said a single operator held that mountain pass for 6 hours against overwhelming enemy forces, while the wounded were evaded. 6 hours and 17 minutes, she corrected. 42 confirmed eliminations. Her voice stayed completely flat. That's where the count actually began. The distant sound of boots on metal flooring echoed through the passageway, getting closer. Warwick tensed immediately. "Go now," Maya said firmly. After he disappeared, she moved with practiced efficiency. She gathered only absolute essentials from beneath her bunk. A compact kit, medical supplies, that stone with a white line running through it. Everything else was either replaceable or potentially traceable. She moved to what appeared to be solid bulkhead and located a nearly invisible seam in the metal. With practiced movements, she removed a false panel, revealing a narrow passage into the ship's maintenance infrastructure, an escape route she'd carefully prepared during her very first week aboard. The sound of those boots grew distinctly louder. They were being methodical and thorough, checking every single cabin. Professional operators. Maya slipped into the maintenance shaft, replacing the panel seamlessly behind her. In complete darkness, she moved with absolute confidence, navigating purely by touch and spatial memory. The carrier's infrastructure was a complex maze of access tunnels and ventilation shafts, invisible to most of the crew, but essential for those who understood how to move unseen through a ship. She changed direction, heading toward the communication center. If Blackwood was coordinating a manhunt for her, that's where the operation would be centralized. She needed information before attempting extraction. The communication center hummed with constant electronic activity. Multiple screens, casting everything in blue light. 3 counterintelligence officers in dark uniforms without any insignia moved between terminals. The lead officer approached the duty officer, a young ensign who looked nervous. "We need immediate access to secure Channel 7, the officer stated flatly. "That's the Admiral's private communication channel, sir." "I don't have authorization for that level." "We do," the officer replied, sliding a signed authorization order across the console. As the terminal began activating, the overhead lights suddenly cut out completely, plunging the entire room into darkness except for the monitor glow. Emergency lighting flickered on seconds later, bathing everything in deep crimson. "Security breach," one officer announced, drawing his weapon immediately. The words died in his throat as Maya emerged from behind a server bank, moving with impossible speed in the limited visibility. The first officer registered only a blur of motion before finding himself face down on the floor. His arm twisted into a position that immobilized him without causing permanent injury. The second reached for his sidearm but froze completely as fingers pressed against a specific nerve cluster in his neck. The third had time only to turn before a precisely calculated strike rendered him unconscious. 7 seconds total. No wasted movement whatsoever. No unnecessary force applied. The terrified ensign raised both hands high. "Relax," Maya said calmly, moving to the main terminal. "I'm not here for you." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through multiple layers of security protocols with obvious familiarity. Classified channels opened, revealing information completely invisible to standard personnel. "You have two choices," she said without looking away from the screen. "Stay here and observe, becoming a direct witness to classified information, or walk out that door right now. Report that you are temporarily relieved of duty and maintain complete plausible deniability." The unseen hesitated, staring at her. "Who are you really? Someone trying to correct a very old mistake." She glanced at his name tag. "Ensign Harris. Some questions are significantly safer when left completely unasked." He stood up slowly, straightening his uniform with visibly shaking hands. "I'll report the counterintelligence presence exactly as ordered, ma'am. Nothing more." As he left, Maya continued searching through secured files at incredible speed. Documents flashed across multiple screens. Mission reports, personnel files, and finally, video footage labeled Khyber Pass Operation. Command Review. Classified Maximum. The video showed a younger Blackwood, his face streaked with blood, being loaded onto a helicopter along with other injured personnel. In the background behind them, gunfire and explosions rocked a narrow mountain pass carved through sheer rock. A single figure, face obscured by tactical gear but unmistakably female in build, provided methodical covering fire with devastating precision. Blackwood, despite his obvious injuries, remained conscious throughout. As the helicopter prepared to lift off, he looked directly at the camera and spoke clearly despite all the surrounding noise. "No extraction authorized for Ghost. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Target must be eliminated regardless of operational casualties." The video continued, showing the lone operator fighting as the helicopter disappeared into gray mountain sky, systematically eliminating attackers while somehow advancing deeper into the pass. The footage cut abruptly as the operator disappeared into a massive cloud of snow and explosive debris. Maya watched her own past unfold on screen, her expression completely unchanged. Those memories had been compartmentalized years ago, filed away as pure operational data rather than personal trauma requiring processing. She copied the files to a secured drive, then initiated a ship-wide broadcast override, a protocol that would commandeer literally every screen on the entire vessel simultaneously. Throughout the carrier, monitors flickered and changed. In the crew mess, all conversation stopped instantly. On the flight deck, maintenance crews paused mid-tasks in officer quarters. Throughout the ship, personnel awakened from sleep to stare at screens, now showing classified combat footage they'd had never been cleared to see. And on the bridge, Admiral Richard Blackwood watched in growing absolute horror as his carefully constructed past materialized on every single screen, exposing a truth buried under 12 years of meticulously crafted fiction. "What have you done?" The words came out as barely a whisper as Maya entered the bridge, flanked now by Chief Warwick and the ship's executive officer. "Numbers don't lie, Admiral," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent space. 42 in that pass, 425 more across 12 years of operations that you and others authorized, then systematically buried. Always alone, always deniable, always expendable. The executive officer stepped forward with formal bearing. "Admiral Blackwood, I have direct orders from the Secretary of the Navy to relieve you of command, effective immediately." 2 Marine Guards entered, taking positions on either side of the Admiral. "And on what grounds exactly?" Blackwood demanded, though his voice trembled noticeably. "Falsification of after-action reports, misappropriation of classified resources, and illegal targeting of a protected intelligence asset." The XO nodded toward Maya. "Lieutenant Commander Krass was reassigned here under direct orders from Joint Command as part of Operation Clean Slate, a comprehensive review of compromised historical operations. You were being evaluated, Admiral," Maya said quietly. "And you failed completely." Blackwood stared at her, comprehension finally dawning across his face. "You set me up from the beginning." "You set yourself up 12 years ago," she corrected calmly. "I simply gave you the opportunity to finally do the right thing." She reached into her pocket and removed a worn, sand-encrusted dog tag, placing it carefully on the console where everyone could see it. The name stamped into the metal was clearly visible. Blackwood, R.I. Keptis, she explained. To remind myself that sometimes the people we save really don't deserve it. The Admiral stared at the tag. The one that had marked him killed in action before Maya's intervention had changed his fate completely. His shoulders slumped as the mythology he'd constructed, the entire career built on stolen valor, collapsed in a single devastating moment. "Lieutenant Commander Cross," he said with sudden formality, using her actual rank for the first time. "I would like to officially revise my report on the Khyber Pass operation." The entire bridge held its breath. "Ghost didn't hold that pass alone," he continued, his voice breaking. "Ghost carried me back to the extraction zone after I was critically wounded. I ordered her to leave me and complete the mission. She refused that direct order. Saved my life, returned me to the extraction helicopter, and then, against explicit orders, turned back to secure both the intelligence package and the remains of our fallen operators." He removed his Admiral's insignia with trembling hands and placed it beside the dog tag. "I hereby resign my commission effective immediately and submit myself for full disciplinary review." The guard stepped forward, but Maya raised one hand. "Wait." She picked up both the insignia and dog tag, studying them briefly before holding them out to Blackwood. "Keep them both. Remember exactly what they cost." His hand shook as he accepted the items back. "Why?" "Because you're not the only one who needs to answer for what happened," she said quietly. "You're just the first." "So what happens now? Ghosts?" Chief Warwick asked as Blackwood was escorted out. "Now we bring it all into the light," she replied. "Every operation, every decision, every single name. And after that, for the first time in 12 years, Maya allowed herself to consider After not as abstract theory but as tangible, reachable future. After, she said, the slightest smile touching her lips, we start counting different things entirely. Have you ever watched someone find redemption by finally exposing a difficult truth? What would you do if you discovered the person who betrayed you had been living off credit for your sacrifice? Drop your thoughts below, and if this story resonated with you, make Sureju refollowing 4 more untold accounts about hidden warriors whose sacrifices too often go completely unrecognized, until someone brave enough finally stands up and says, "This is who I really am."